Super excited, super excited to be here and be able to listen to Rachel Hardies again talk about um, parenting and helping. I think all of our biggest struggles is around what to do when my child is, I say freaking out, but I'm sure there's a better term for that out there. So we'll be here today. So up your parenting game, everybody. You can do this. You got it. It can be a lot of fun. And we're going to be back on the 23rd and also March 2nd and 9th. So we hope that you come back and we'll have some things to send you in the email. So good job having working emails, everybody. So without further ado, Rachel, you're on.
I am on. Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. And whew, I was doing pretty good in terms of nerves until just now. Oh my goodness. Okay, well, yeah, so welcome to Up Your Parenting Game. We are going to start off with what a woman named Teresa, who wrote a book about self-regulation, calls Ease Keys. And so this is going to be an ongoing theme, this idea of regulation. We're going to set the base for that tonight. And so we're going to explore different activities that are designed to connect you with your body and create a balance in your system. And so these are practices, like I said, that you can use to regulate yourself, which I will explain as we go. So we are going to start with, whoops, not that button, that one. We're going to start with getting your witness in play. And so I'm going to lead you through this, and it's about taking a minute to simply notice what is happening in your body right now. So like my breathing's a little shallow, my heart's beating kind of fast. Trying to slow it down here. But I invite you to stay as you are. Don't change a thing, and be curious about what is happening, like taking a snapshot. So I'd like you to observe your breath. Is it shallow or is it full? Is it mostly high in your lungs or is it mostly deep in your lungs, or just is it going deep in your lungs? See if you can describe the look on your face. What's happening with your facial muscles? Is there tension or ease in your jaw and your neck? Is your abdomen contracted or is it expanded and moving freely as you breathe? And what is the position of your feet? And with that question, I'm moving mine more onto the floor. So this is getting your witness in play. It's really simple, going through kind of that check-in through your bodies, taking a moment to listen, because our bodies are always communicating with us. It's about cultivating curiosity and compassion. So we have habits for how we sit, how we move, how we breathe, how we stand. We just have these habits of how we are, and we can tune into our body and notice if those habits are serving us or not. And our bodies are just so amazing and so integral to our mind, which I hope you notice tonight. So we're going to do another ease key. Oh, wrong button. There we go. This one is about how we sit. We're going to set our seat, and our sitting bones and our tailbone and our pubic bone all together form a strong foundation for our spine, our torso, our brain, and our organs. And so they kind of start us out with how we can hold ourselves in our posture. And so this is an invitation to connect yourself to your built-in support system by setting your seat. Each time you sit down, you can pay attention to this. And so this graphic shows if we have a tucked tailbone, we get some curvature. We kind of collapse in on our tummy and we get some curvature. If we extend our tailbone, now we're kind of tight again up the front. There's some tension through the neck. And so it's about finding that place where your body is kind of resting on itself. So if you're willing, stand up as you are able, or lean forward in your seat if you're not in a position to stand. And you're going to send your tailbone, I'll just stay seated, out and back as you sit down, kind of like a penguin flipping its tail out, or if you were in a tuxedo with tails, you can imagine flipping the tuxedo tails out, and you're going to sit back down to set your seat. And I invite you to notice and feel the strong foundation created when your sitting bones and your tailbone are aligned. Now, if you're willing, rock your tailbone back and forth, alternate tucking it and really extending it. And notice if there's a place in there where you kind of feel like, oh, that's where I could stop. That's where I feel supported. Notice if there's any tension or tightness as you go forward. Notice if there's what it feels like when you tuck it in. And as you alternate this back and forth, let yourself inhale and exhale. Feel the movement of your body and your breath at the same time. So maybe just a couple more times. Now let yourself come back to stillness in the position that feels most comfortably aligned for you right now. Notice the position of your tailbone and notice the shape of your spine. Thank you to everyone for doing that. So those were 2 ease keys, getting your witness in play. So noticing your body and sitting your seat. So welcome. As Anne said, tonight is the first of 4 classes. I hope to see you all at all of them. We are recording them. If you can't make one, you'll be able to watch it. February 23rd, March 2nd, and I believe that was March 9th. It's behind the video here for me. Yeah, March 9th. We're just doing this 1 hour, 6:30 to 7:30. You're welcome to ask questions as we go. I ask you to please put them in the chat, and Anne and Shelley are monitoring those for me. And there are everybody here tonight and present on video gets a prize. And anybody who attends all 4 in-person classes is eligible for a prize drawing at the end. I think we're good. Shelley, did I miss anything or misspeak?
I don't think so. I would like to see the glorious faces of people who just for at least, or at least towards the end, please ask questions. I totally get if you're, don't want to be visible, but we want to at least see your face for a second so we know you're here and we know that everything's moving along. That's it, I think.
Thank you. You can always share at the end too if anything comes to mind. All right, so a little bit about who am I? So like Anne said, I'm Rachel Hardies. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I specialize in play therapy for all ages, although kids are way more willing. I also work as a parent coach, a mental strength coach for youth athlete and performers. I work with teams, coaches, and in addition to what I do for work, well, I also really like teaching these classes. This really gets me excited to be able to do this and to share this information. And I'm a mom to a sophomore in high school. And in addition to that, I'm a person who has varied interests. I love to run. I love to be outside and just being really active. All right, so here is what we're going to talk about over tonight and the next 3 classes. So to start with tonight, we're going to talk about 4 situations that we often perceive as threats and that activate the stress response in our nervous system. We're going to talk about our nervous system and more about that stress response. And I'm going to introduce the idea of co-regulation and regulation. And in my mind and through my learning, this is kind of the basis for our ability to interact well, for our ability to maintain relationships. And as parents, being able to understand our nervous system and understand our kiddos' nervous systems really can help us through challenging situations. So after we set the groundwork for tonight, in our future classes, we're going to talk about developmental stages and expectations and what to expect. Because I think we've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves for what kids are able to do, especially when it comes to regulating themselves. We're going to talk about temperament. And so it's in the terms of kids. And though we want you to think about yours too, because temperament, your kiddo's temperament might be completely different from yours. And that can make a real challenging parenting situation. I'm going to introduce attentive play and the process of being near. And this is a way to do, again, basic play therapy as a way to continue to strengthen your relationship with your child. And so then the last class, we're going to talk about kind of some specific situations, discipline situations, challenging situations, but I have a lot of flexibility. So I invite you to please put in the chat, what are some topics that you would hope to learn about in our time together? Remembering that right now we're focusing on 0 to 10-year-olds. In April-ish, following this, we will be doing a class about parenting tweens and teens, so 11 to 18. So I'd love to know though, what do you want to know about so that I can tailor this more for what you're hoping to get and what would be helpful. Is a lot of information tonight, and we'll see where we get. But if I don't get through everything tonight, just know I'm going to move it to the next class and we'll continue on. We're not going to miss out on information. Okay, so then my invitation to you tonight is to witness your reactions and your body responses as we talk. That's why I started with getting our witness in play. Bring an open mind and curiosity and try to keep it. Notice if you do start having any judgments or judging the information, and it's okay if you do, fine, like that's fine. And just be curious about it. What is the judgment about? What are you noticing? You may know a lot of this information, and I hope that you'll hold an open mind, maybe practice a beginner's mind. And in that way, maybe I'll say something different than how you've heard it before, or maybe within all that, there's some nugget of information. And everything we do in mental health and with body work and the wisdom traditions, like it really requires practice. So as we talk about the nervous system and we talk about regulating the nervous system, you really need to practice it, and ideally practice regulation. And we'll define what that means. When you're not like in having a stress response, like do these in the times that you feel good too, so that they become more available or something you think more to do when you are having a stress response. So within that, I hope that you'll learn one thing today that you'll be willing to practice, as well as at least one thing that's maybe new. Okay, so then parenting is a really sensitive subject. And I know just in talking to people and myself as a parent, it's really easy to start to feel defensive. It's really easy to hear information as judging. And all of this then would activate our stress response, which we'll talk about. But I don't want what I'm sharing, I hope you don't, and don't intend it to sound like a judgment about how anybody's been. Like I said, it's a tender topic. And we're usually inclined to judge ourselves pretty negatively for how we parent. And so please be kind to yourself. I guess I will share that or put out there that I do tend towards a relationship-based parenting style. I'm not a big fan of power over parenting, rewards, punishments, things like that. Not to say they don't have their place, and I have done that. I have used them with my son. This is my own experience and my own bias in terms of what we know about the nervous system is that relationally, parenting from a relationship place can be more enjoyable and maybe more connection building than some other ways. But again, please be kind with yourself. If you learn something tonight, I don't intend for anybody to feel shame or judgment. So, okay, let's take a moment and let's take a breath in, kind of set your seat again. Take a breath in as deep as you're comfortable, and just let yourself breathe out. And we have a pretty kind of smoky sunlight on the water scene there. And now let's dive into, the 4 areas that our nervous system and our minds can perceive as threats. So part of what we currently think we understand about our nervous system, is that it is designed to keep us alive by responding to a threat or challenge to our survival, or more accurately, even our perception of a threat or a challenge. And it also is designed to respond to our perceptions of safety. So the thinking is that in a split second and constantly, some aspect of our nervous system is scanning our environment to decide if we're safe or unsafe. We're looking to see if there is a threat or a challenge. Can I overcome the challenge? Can I fight it? Can I get away from it? And if there's nothing I can do, I'm just going to kind of freeze and collapse. And depending on how we perceive this threat or challenge, we're going to have different behaviors. So our brain's always scanning. We're scanning other people. We're scanning our environment. So the founder of synergetic play therapy, which is the model of play therapy that probably most informs, what I'm certified in and most informs how I interact with people. Lisa Dion, who founded that, has conceptualized these 4 areas, these 4 situations where we are more likely to perceive a threat or a challenge. And part of what we're going to talk about tonight a little bit later is like our current situation. The current pandemic has definitely created an experience of all 4 of these for a lot of us, and either all 4 at the same time or cycling through all 4. And to know that this applies to your kids too. They have perception of threat as well. So the first perception, the first area we can perceive a threat is being physically or emotionally unsafe. Our brains, like I said, are always judging. And so when someone's approaching us, especially maybe if they're a stranger, we're already going to be kind of alert. And we're going to wonder, does this person look like they might hurt me? What does their face say? How are they moving? What is their vocal tone like? Is there an edge in their voice? Is there a scowl on their face? How about is there a smile on their face? Maybe they're making eye contact. And so with that, you can pay attention to how you hold your face and what your vocal tone is saying when you're interacting with your kids and other people, as well as, like what your vocal tone sounds like. Like, for example, when I get angry, my voice gets really tight because my throat constricts. So it's obvious I'm upset. So these are things we look at, and if our environment is physically or emotionally unsafe, or if we think it's physically or emotionally unsafe, we're going to activate our stress response. The second threat happens when we perceive an incongruence in our environment. Like I have it like spidey sense, our brain gets a little tingle that something isn't quite matching. And an example of this that I have to admit I've done probably to my own son is when we ask someone if they're angry, like maybe we're getting some cues that they seem angry, and we ask them and they sharply respond with, "I'm not mad," or "I'm not angry." We get a little taken aback because their message and their tone are out of sync. They are incongruent. And that puts our brains on alert. Like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? So being congruent with our messaging, being congruent in what we're showing can help reduce our perceptions of threat. So just knowing that it's important to have as much congruence around us as we can, as much as we can control. So the third threat happens when we're facing the unknown. And Lisa Dion would say more specifically, we're reacting to what our minds are telling us about the unknown, kind of the stories that we're telling ourselves about what it's going to be like or what may happen. And most of the time, I have yet to meet someone who does otherwise. Most of the time, we're putting a scary or negative story or thought about what's going to happen. We rarely tell ourselves like, hey, this is going to turn out great. I'm gonna nail it and it's going to be wonderful. But wouldn't it be amazing if that's what we could do? So when we're facing the unknown, we can pay attention to what we're telling ourselves about it. If there's a new situation for our kiddo, we can help them in facing the unknown by letting them know what's going to happen. In writing, it's called advanced identifying. I had a previous career as a technical writer, so writing computer documents. And within our end user documentation, we'd set up at the start of each chapter a list of what was going to happen through that book or what information was in that book. And I've kind of latched onto that imagery for working with anybody, like allowing ourselves, making sure we provide an advanced identifier so that we can let ourselves and our kids or people around us know that this is how things are going to go. This is what it's going to look like. And that's going to take the unknown out of a situation and help us have less of a stress response. This fourth threat this is a strong one. Oh my gosh, I hear this like all the time, all through my days. The fourth threat is when we put on shoulds or shouldn'ts on ourselves, in our own minds. We're often telling ourselves we should have done something, or we shouldn't have done something, or oh, we should have spoken up, or oh, we shouldn't have said that. In addition to others put shoulds and shouldn'ts on us too. And we put shoulds and shouldn'ts on others. Another way to say it would be like, these are expectations. And so Lisa's idea with this out of the play therapy is that shoulds are perceived as a threat, or can be perceived as a threat, because they're often denying reality. And within that, then it's implying that we're not okay the way we are. They imply that we need to be different than what we are, or that life needs to be different, or that the other person needs to be different. And as parents, we do this to our kids a lot about their behaviors, a lot of times, of what they should or shouldn't do. And sometimes they may not be capable of that. And that'll be that developmental piece. Just can you kind of think about too, what shoulds you've said to yourself, and how does it feel? So a way I've found to respond to shoulds, because I use them too. They come out of my mouth as well. There's a lot of shoulds in our language. And so I practice changing the sentence, by changing should with the word could or the word would. I find it usually works. There's some sentences that might be awkward. But for me, energetically, and the way it feels for me, is that it creates some space for choice. And it creates some acceptance for the way things are, or how they happened, where when we have a should, it doesn't allow much space. It should have been that way, but it wasn't. And so we're kind of creating stress and a fight with that. And so, like I said, all these perceptions of threats apply to our kids too. Excuse me. We may not understand what it is that they are perceiving as a threat. We may not understand what it is that they're upset about. And as we talk about regulating, we don't necessarily need to. We can connect with ourselves and connect with them and show them how to navigate these thoughts, these perceptions. Excuse me. So I'm going to pause, take some water. Are there any questions or thoughts that anybody would like to share at the moment?
Both Becca and Amanda, I'll just drop this here and then you let me know if you're going to cover it. We have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old being asked to do things over and over and not responding, and big emotions and difficulty regulating. So I think we'll probably, you may or may not get into that, but I thought I'll plant that seed here. So as we go through, you can cover it as appropriate. So just wanted to put that out there.
Big emotions. I think we're right on track.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Great.
the not doing what is asked, that might not specifically address
today.
that until later.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah.
great. Keep those coming and we'll fit them in. So then we're going to move on to our nervous system and the stress response. So like I mentioned earlier, our nervous system is continuously monitoring our external and our internal environments for risk and for safety. And so we're starting with this because understanding our nervous system is going to help us be able to regulate, help us be calm, in general, help us be able to behave in ways we feel good about. And adults and children's nervous systems generally work in about the same way. Adults are more developed. We have faster connections, stronger connections in our brains. Kids are still developing those. We have more robust frames of references for things. We have more experiences, and hopefully we have a greater ability to sit with our emotions and regulate. But I'm sure we can all think of grown-ups who haven't. And so when we talk about our nervous system, I'm talking about our brains and these nerves that extend down our spinal cords and branch throughout our body. So we're going to describe, we're going to look at the stress response through pictures of cats, which just makes me so happy. And so as we go through these, as I describe these responses of our nervous system and the stress response, please hold in mind that there is no judgment that one response is better than another. This is how we're designed. At least this is what we think right now. This is how we're designed to respond and be in our environment. There are responses, we feel calm, centered, grounded, happy, or excited. Generally, those all feel good and we behave in ways that we like. And just like everything, those feelings change and they end. And sometimes then we feel things we don't enjoy so much. And sometimes we have such a strong stress response so quickly, we may not be in conscious control of our actions or our words. So we're going to look at the cats. If you have a problem with cats, then I invite you to envision an animal that you like in these similar poses as much as might apply. And I invite you to notice is what thoughts go through your mind and what sensations happen in your body. And so just a side note, as you see these pictures, I've grouped them based on, I guess, how they struck me and my interpretations of them. And it's okay if you look at that and you're like, that doesn't make sense to me. That's okay. We're interpreting them differently. So, all right, now we have kitty number 1. Just notice, do you have any thoughts? Do you want to do something with the kitty? Or did you notice anything in your body? And we're going to look at another one. And just, what do you notice with these kitties? We're going to do, I think there's one more and another one. Just kind of think about what's going on for these kitties in that moment. So these kitties were my attempt at showing being alert and attentive. These are those attentive kitties, aware kitties, alert kitties, like our brain, always scanning the external environment and also noticing our internal environment and asking the question, is there a threat? Is there a challenge? Am I safe? And I can't remember, it's like really kind of super fast how often our brain is checking for this. So those nerves from inside help our brain go, what's happening in my body? And then our eyeballs and our senses help us know what's happening outside. So those were aware and just attentive kitties paying attention. Okay, take a breath, check in with your system. And we are going to look at more kitties. Notice what happens when you see these cats. Do you want to approach them? Do you want to try to have a conversation with those kitties or pet them? And then these kitties. That kitty on the top right, that orange one, that was my kitty. He died a few years ago, but that was the look he'd get right before he'd attack me. He was a mad kitty. So these are what I call the attack cats or the runaway cats. Because the ones who are like, they're not quite attacking, unlike like that one in the middle there in white, that one's coming at us. But the other ones are scared and about to run away, possibly about to run away. And so this is also known as the fight, flight, or freeze response. We mobilize to this when we perceive that there's a threat or a challenge. So our brain's like, yep, there's a threat, there's a challenge. And it presses on this gas pedal of the nervous system because we think we can overcome the challenge. We can either fight it or we can run away from it. And in this way, then our brain's like, yep, the best thing to do is to face it, fight it, run away. You can also think of this as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh. It's kind of a Tigger energy, lots of bouncing around. Here are some of the typical signs of fight, flight, or freeze. So these are the things you can observe in other people, you can notice in yourself. This is where, so we see anxiety, this is irritability, generally comes with an increased heart rate, a flushed face, there's usually a rush of adrenaline. One important thing in this place is that people can't hear friendly voices. Something happens in the auditory system, and so they're just not able to, process it well. This is where we see people fidgety, hypervigilant, rage, excessive body movement, difficulty concentrating. There might be changes in sleep, eating, or bathroom habits. So those are all behavior things that we can use to go, is who I'm looking at, or am I myself possibly moving towards this fight or flight or freeze, this attack cat, runaway cat energy and action. So take a breath. Now we're gonna look at more kitties. There's that kitty. And there's those kitties. And noticing just what thoughts go through your mind, what happens in your body. And these were the best examples I could find of like the collapse and shutdown cat. This is the collapse cat. It's shut down. It might have a sleep response. There weren't any pictures of like kitties who had fainted, but they might be like a puddle. This is when we decide that the challenge is too big and we're not going to be able to fight it. We're not going to be able to outrun it. So we shut down. it's kind of this, it's the same idea as what an opossum does when it plays dead. This is the far side of that response. It's the break of the nervous system. It shuts things down and immobilizes us by fear in the face of a challenge. So then these are the typical signs of a collapse or shutdown. Sometimes we feel helpless. We see a lot of low motivation, people zoning out. So as we go through these, you're probably identifying them, hopefully for yourself, and also maybe noticing what you see in your kids or partners or friends or people around you, because we all do this. This is all how our nervous systems respond. This is where we see fainting on the far side. People may describe wanting to just disappear. They don't have a lot of emotional expression. They can't concentrate in either of these stress states. We can't really concentrate. We don't remember well. Maybe our bodies feel really heavy, lots of withdrawn, tired, exhaustion. And sometimes we have kind of one stress response we tend to more than another. And it can really depend on what situation we're in, which one shows up for us. And so remembering there's not a judgment that this one's bad or that one's bad. It's about noticing what's happening in your nervous system. And then we'll talk about what to do with it. So we're going to pause there and we are going to find our awe. This is another ease key. I love this one. And it just so happened that it's a kitty. So this is about our jaw. And from the body work world, there's the jaw is a common place that we hold tension. I think the other ones, probably our shoulders or necks. But we hold tension here when we're stressed or when we're uncomfortable. We might even be clenching our teeth. So relaxing our jaw, the jaw tension, is a gateway to finding ease, a gateway to releasing tension in our neck, our chest, and even our abdomen. So for many of us, a yawn or a sigh helps activate this relaxation response. So we're going to start by yawning. Everybody yawn. It doesn't matter if it's real or pretend. I have to admit, even talking about yawning makes me want to yawn. Yawn. Feel the heaviness of the lower jaw, the weight of gravity pulling it down. Feel the softness of your cheeks and your jaw as you do that. So if you're already done, do it again. Find your ah or a sigh. So when you yawn and go and just really let that out. Humming and activating our vocal box also helps regulate us. So just take maybe one more breath in and make the sound and just straight down and notice your neck and your jaw after doing that. All right, thank you so much for playing along. I can't see all the videos, but I'm gonna assume you did. So we're gonna look at yet more cat pictures. Okay, so check in with your body now, find your seat, and notice what response do you have when you see these kitties? Oh, sweet. That one's eating. Oh, don't you want to cuddle these kitties? Don't they look so inviting? So these are what I considered examples of safe kitties, connected kitties, regulated kitties. Hold on, lost my way here. These kitties know that there is no threat in their world at the moment. So a safe cat is regulated, not necessarily calm. That's a little bit of a fine point. In this case, these kitties were, but these kitties, and we can be connected to our experience inside and out. We can be managing our thoughts about feeling threatened. And so in this way, there doesn't appear to be a sense that there's threatened. And when we're safe, it's when we rest, it's when we digest, it's when we're friendly to people, it's when we engage socially, it's when we want to caretake. And so here's some other things we can notice when we're regulating. We're aware of our breath. We can think clearly. Clarity seems to be, I was talking with a friend of mine this morning about this. So within, it's called polyvagal theory. Being safe means being calm, feeling good. It's kind of all those feelings we really like. Within synergetic play therapy, they've expanded the idea of regulation to mean being connected to ourselves with whatever it is we're experiencing. So if I'm angry, I can know I'm angry, and I can still be able to think clearly because I'm breathing, I'm naming it, these things we'll talk about. I'm kind of on top of the experience. And so I have clarity about it. I can be conscious with my choices. I can make eye contact. I can communicate verbally. I have an awareness. Sometimes, a lot of times, regulation is feeling calm. It is feeling gratitude. It feels really good. It's also when we feel safe that this is where we learn and grow. This is where we're able to meditate, or where we can play, or where we've got some energy and we can get things done. And so, I guess where my goal, or where I come from when I work with people, is helping people be able to be in like our entire range of human experience, and not feel a pressure to, well, I have to feel calm, or I need to feel happy, I need to have gratitude. It all comes and goes. And so feeling safe makes it easier to regulate for most of us. And regulation is a little bit broader about being more connected to ourselves. So some things we can do as parents, and I mentioned this before, is we can cue our kids to safety. We can cue people around us to safety by our facial expression. The thinking with that is that we are designed to tune into kind of this middle portion of other people's faces to decide if they're safe or not. And a lot of this happens out of our conscious control. The other one, like I mentioned, was vocal tone, resting heart rate. If a resting heart rate is kind of rhythmically beating along, that helps our body know that, hey, we're all right here. Smooth rhythmic breathing, that also helps our body know that we're all right. And with that, we're breathing into our tummies, or the lower part of our lungs. We know there's no immediate threat. So I'm going to talk about regulation. Before I go into that, I just want to check in. Are there any questions? Oh, and everybody just kind of take a breath.
There was a comment, and it really is a question, and I think that I want to throw it out there because it's just happens all the time. So before I blather on, talking about when your child is just whatever, having a meltdown or overstimulated, and you want to help calm them down, and you have that react like it, let me hold you, right? But that's not helpful. It's that line of, for me, that line of keeping myself regulated and not being triggered, or whatever you call it, by the child's reaction, but being able to want to do something that's helpful.
Yes. So I think we're going to address a bit of that when we talk about co-regulation. And if that's not enough, we can definitely talk about it more. I'm watching our time. We have about a little over 15 minutes. Yeah, it's really hard because there is that idea that our emotions are contagious. And so when our kids are flipping their lid, Dan Siegel, you can find a YouTube video of Dan Siegel, talks about it as flipping our lids. When our kids have flipped their lids, it is really hard to stay connected to ourselves. And it's especially hard, I think, when it's our kids compared to somebody else's, or like when I'm working with play therapy in the playroom. Excuse me, it's a completely different experience than really regulating with our kids and co-regulating. It's much harder. So when we talk about regulation, I'm talking about kind of mastering the art of noticing and being curious about your thoughts, because there's this interplay between what we tell ourselves about situations and what's happening in our body. And so we can tell ourselves upsetting thoughts. I think I'm really good at that. And I think we as humans are pretty good at that. And as a result, then my heart's going to start beating, my chest might get constricted, or my breathing might increase. Even though there's like nothing happening around me, I am going through, like maybe an example is looking ahead to a challenging conversation, or looking ahead to a challenging situation with our kiddos, like someplace where is really hard for your kiddo. You might start dysregulating yourself and putting that, activating your stress response simply by thinking about it. And so it's really important to acknowledge and be aware of how powerful our thoughts really are. And so our thoughts affect our bodies. Our bodies can also affect our thoughts. Within those nerve pathways, like 80% of the pathways take information from our body and all our organs and all our muscles and send it to our brain. So maybe we're not quite sure, we're not clear what a thought is having, but maybe our tummy's starting to get tight. Well, now our brain's going to go, whoa, what's happening down there? And a tight tummy generally means we're not safe. So now we're going to start activating that stress response, because our brain's going to be like, something's not safe here. And so, yeah, so the two go back and forth. So then what that means is we can use our body to send messages of safety and help our brains let go. We can also let go of the thoughts. We can also practice noticing our thoughts. What are we telling ourselves? And reframing things and changing what we're telling ourselves. So these two go back and forth and are both very important in regulating. Because if you're looking at your kiddo and let's say they're flipping out their lid, or oh my God, let's say they're flipping their lid in the middle of the grocery store, right? Mortifying for most of us. And so our thoughts, even probably before we can consciously catch it, go to, oh my God, people are going to look, people are going to judge me as a parent. What are they going to think of my kid? How do I respond to my kid in this situation? And now we're getting dysregulated and having a stress response with our kiddo. So it can happen really fast. It's one of the ways to help ourselves stay on top of our experience is name it to tame it. And this was created by Dr. Dan Siegel. And it works like this. First, we identify what we're feeling, what we're thinking as best as we can, or what body sensations we're having, right? We name it. And amazingly, as a result of naming it, and ideally out loud if you can, but definitely in your own mind, in this way, we can keep it from taking over our lives. So we tame it, right? So name it to tame it. This is an amazing one to do in front of our kids, with the caveat that it very much has to be an I statement and not something around you're making me feel mad as a way to tame that, because that's not going to help. But you can talk about my tummy is getting really tight, my chest feels tight, or I'm clenching my jaw. And I usually pair it when I practice this, because I do this for myself. When I practice this, I was always paired with a breath for me. My breath is the biggest thing I use to regulate myself, and as well as naming what is happening in my system. So one of the things with co-regulating, which we're going to talk about hopefully tonight, if not, we will start with it next week. When we name what's happening for us out loud so our kids can hear it, then we're letting them into our system. And then we're going to show them what to do with it. So we can name it, and then we can take a big breath, or maybe we need to roll our shoulders. Maybe we need to relax our jaw and find our ah, whatever it might be. But this is a way that we can teach our kids to emotionally regulate, in a way that's generally more receptive, more well received than telling them what to do. So name it to tame it. You can look up Dan Siegel. He's got all kinds of YouTube videos out, but name it to tame it is a really pretty powerful way to stay on top of our experience. It surprises me how well it works. And sometimes it won't work. Sometimes the stress response is too big. So I invite you to kind of pick some things that feel good to you and practice them over and over and over again, and know that they're not always going to work. It just kind of depends on what's happening in our system, what we keep telling ourselves. So consciously breathing, you guys probably know and practice a bunch of different ways to breathe. There is no right one of those, aside from find the one that you would do. Find one of the breathing methods that you are inclined to practice. That's the best one to do. And then drinking cold water, or putting cold water on your face and your neck, because there's the thought is that activates the nerve that lets us know that we're safe, and it puts us kind of in connection with ourselves. So I've been drinking ice water all evening here. So those are some ideas about regulation. And so connecting with our body, I've found that for teens and adults, we're really disconnected from our bodies. It's really hard to connect in with sensations. And so and whatever, there's no judgment on that. We don't need to look at why. Let's look at, well, if you're having trouble connecting with your body, what are some ways to tune into it? With the caveat that for some people, connecting in with their body doesn't feel safe. For some people who've had trauma histories or trauma within their body, it might not be a safe place to go. And so only do this within you might feel uncomfortable. So I don't necessarily want to say within your comfort zone, but know yourself. And if you have a hard time connecting with your body or have trauma, I do highly recommend finding a therapist to help you process that through so that you can connect with your body in a supportive way. So a lot of connecting with our body is answering the question of, well, how do you know? So when somebody tells me they feel mad, great. How do you know? What's happening in your body that lets you know that you're experiencing what we call mad? Or how do you know that you're feeling happy? How do you know that you feel excited? Because each of these emotions show up in different ways in our bodies. The anxiety and excitement sometimes show up in the same way, so that can be interesting to explore. Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling excited? Or maybe like me tonight, a little bit of both, because I love doing this and very much an introvert. So it's both. But I know that and I breathe through that. So one way to connect with your body is noticing the sensations of needing to eat. How do you know that you're hungry? What words and what sensations let you know that you're hungry? And I've heard it described as, our tummies grumble and growl. So you kind of feel that vibration, or there's a pit in our stomach. It's a little kind of hollow. But notice that next time you're like, I'm hungry, I invite you to pause and go, well, how do I know I'm hungry? And I like these because our body gives us these three opportunities repeatedly through a day. So the other one is notice the sensations of needing to go to the bathroom. How do you know? And even then, how do you know if you're needing to go pee, or how do you know if you're going to poop? And what is your body telling you? What does that feel like? And when you need to go to sleep, how do you know that you're feeling tired and that it's time to go to sleep? So these are, like I said, multiple times throughout a day that we have an opportunity to connect with our body. So I invite you within your own sense of safety to practice this. So here's another breath that comes from, okay, so here's my age. It comes from the Mindful Menopause Workbook. But this is a powerful meditation book of mindfulness. And I loved this. And so she invites us to check in with our breath, no matter if we're feeling great or if we're feeling awful. This is kind of the thing. We can check in with our body all the time. She suggests settling ourselves onto our seat and take some breaths. And if you're feeling tense, and you can all practice this with me right now or hear the instructions and then we can do it together. Take a deep breath in, tense your muscles, hold your breath. And when you start feeling a need for air, let the breath out with a deep cannon breath, which means a round mouth with a short burst as you release the air through your mouth, right? So you pull it in, tense everything up, hold it, and then let it burst out of your mouth. And repeat this as often as you'd like. Maybe in private, as I was thinking about this, like, well, this isn't really one I could do in a meeting at work, where I could, it just might not be well received. So this, maybe you need to go into a bathroom or into a private space and take a cannon breath. So this is an example, one that I like because it's designed to release tension and we can tense everything up and then we tend to feel more relaxed. Like I said, there's so many different ways to breathe and practice using your breath. So then co-regulation, I think we're going to do this. Co-regulation is where we offer our groundedness, right? So we offer our regulation to somebody else's ungrounded brain. So when we're talking about parenting, we're talking about lending this to our kids. Really, our kids don't have these skills. People are not born knowing how to do this. So we need to teach them. So this is why this nervous system piece and regulation is the basis for so much, because as adults, I believe it's our responsibility to be able to regulate ourselves as best as possible and be practicing it and working on it. We are not going to be perfect. Please don't go there. We're not going to be perfect. And within that is this idea of we're going to create rupture in relationship and we can repair relationship. And so no need to be perfect, which actually I wanted to bring up. I've talked with friends. I have a friend who wouldn't come tonight because she knows she does some poor things in her parenting and she didn't want to learn how bad she was. And I know a lot of parents feel pressure to be perfect and pressure to do things the right way. But if you've read any parenting books, you've probably already learned that there's a million different ways to parent. There's a million different ideas. Even tonight, I'm offering, or these next 4 classes, I'm offering you a perspective. I'm offering you something to consider. I don't know that this is right. Maybe in another generation or 2, we'll change how we do things. And so know that a perfect parent would cause children challenges just as much as our wonderful imperfect selves. So one thing we talked about in school is a perfect parent isn't going to create a perfect child. There will still be challenges for kids to overcome. There's thinking that we're designed to overcome challenges, right? This is how we're made. So take the perfect parent hat off, set it down, or crumple it up and throw it in the trash and be you. Okay, I meant to say that earlier. Anyone can be co-regulated. My son will often name out my feelings, not always accurately, but he will. And sometimes that helps me pause and go, oh, you're right. I am feeling angry right now and I am directing it at you and I'm sorry. So anybody can be co-regulated and anybody can co-regulate. The thing with the co-regulation is that it happens best by modeling it. It happens best by us being the grown-ups we want our kids to be, or working towards being that. And like I said, within that, we're going to make mistakes. I still will yell at my son sometimes. I think I've even stomped up and down in the past few weeks, actually recently. So I apologize, I repair. And that is, that helps create stronger relationships than if we didn't make mistakes and didn't acknowledge our mistakes. So one way to regulate, well, the biggest way to regulate is by modeling it ourselves. We think it's a result of this resonance and attunement between our brains and our nervous systems. So like the yawning, I yawn or you yawn, it's going to make me yawn. That's an example of this resonance and why they think co-regulation happens. So one of the things I often do around other people, if I'm noticing things are amping up, I will take a deep kind of audible breath. And I've noticed that the people I'm around might do the same. Or I might just kind of start pressing my hands together. I always pair it with a breath. That's what I do at this point. Or I might start moving a little bit. So not big movements, but I just might do some subtle stuff. It's helping me regulate and stay connected, and the other person's nervous system is seeing it, and it has a chance of helping them. As an aside, I've practiced this with my cat. So the little black kitty that was up here is a semi-feral stray who is very much afraid, had been very much afraid of a lot of things. And I would hold her and I would just rock and I would take deep breaths. So we do that with babies instinctively. We don't do it as much as our kids get older, especially when they're in high school, as much as I'd like to. But we can do it if I'm talking to my son and I just slowly start rocking. It can be a way of co-regulating. And we can talk about this more as we go through and as we have other examples. And like I mentioned earlier, naming it to tame it is another way to co-regulate. So you state what's happening in your body and you know what your body needs to do. And part of that works, it works because it covertly invites whoever you're with, but in this case, we're talking about our kiddos, it invites them to notice their body and their thoughts and regulate with you. So if I start, when I've talked about my tummy, At the moment, it feels pretty okay. My breathing's fairly relaxed. My shoulders are relaxed. I'm okay right now. I don't feel tension in my body. It's likely that you've probably checked in with your body too. And that's how co-regulation works. That, oh, we're at 7:30. We can talk about the reality of now next time. Here's resources. I think this is one of the things we're going to create a page of to make available to you. So this is where a lot of this information has come from. A lot of my learning has come from. And then, well, no, we'll have this at other times too, but thank you for being here today. I'm going to stop sharing.
My gosh, I lost track of time there for a minute. So thank you for that, Rachel. I just really like how you tell the story, right? And that we're in it together as parents and children, you know, and just focusing on that piece of keeping ourselves calm and helping to keep your child calm. So I'm excited to see how this goes, and I hope that this was meaningful for everybody. Guys, I will definitely hang around if you have questions or comments, and to make sure we get them, you know, get them out there. So if we want to come back to them next time, we'll be prepared, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm happy to stay on a few more minutes too, if there's questions, or to make sure we go through the chat. Make sure we get everything out of that.
I just posted, I just would love to know how you all heard about this class. So as we're spreading the word for the next few, how we can best reach people who need, you know, who you think would benefit. And I had another point, but then I forgot. Anyway, I will be following up in the next day or so. The video will be on the pwforkids.org website. So I will follow up with an email of the resources and, you know, links to the site, and also with the fun little incentives of a Starbucks gift card coming up. So if you have any questions, I'll put my email in, but you'll hear from me in the next day or so. So reply if you have questions, but hopefully that will kind of cover any loose ends as far as questions and yeah, and
Well,
what's coming next.
so that's good to know that somebody saw it in the PDN. And of course, Validia, is that how you pronounce your name? Please feel free to give Susan any feedback as well. So right on, Susan. Oh, anxiety. So much is around anxiety. I tell you, I was at a mental health training, and overall it wasn't very interesting, or I didn't learn very much, but one thing, and they said that 30% of the population could be clinically diagnosed with anxiety. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? And in my mind, I'm like, the other 60 aren't telling the truth, but
Right.
right. But
Yeah.
I thought, well, so then this is either something pathological happening in our environment that this is causing this reaction in the population, or it's perfectly normal and we just need to understand it and try to figure out how to address it. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it's probably a combination of both, right? Because it's that thing, we're always looking for the perceived danger. But
Right. And we're living in a pandemic, and I think it's hard, no matter where anybody's fallen in it, to not have it have had an impact on us. I mean, the intensity within the mental health counseling is so much higher than it had been. I mean, people are coming in with really intense levels of stress responses and struggle. And
well, I think
yeah,
it's that perceived threat, you know, and it's an invisible one, right?
right.
I can't actually tell where this is.
Right. We just know there's a physical threat to our safety. And
When you couldn't tell where it was, it could be anyone, it could be any, you know, right? That's not
right.
a good.
Right. So it's going to take our nervous systems, I think, a bit to settle out for however it's been impacting us. And so breathing, right? Definitely one of the ways that we can help connect with ourselves. Eating and sleeping is another one that I know people are really struggling with.
And I thought, oh, go ahead, Amanda.
Well, I just found the slide about collapse really interesting because, we hear a lot about fight, flight, freeze, but the collapse, and I wonder, like, I've been wondering with my 10-year-old, I have 3 kids, but the 10-year-old is for this age group, it seems like that's what it is. Like she used to have more like a fight response, but now it's more like collapsing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I wonder if you're finding that with kids, but just in general, that this pandemic, we're in an endemic, maybe, hopefully, but if that's happening for more people, that if your natural response was to like, I can do it, and then you had to be like, I can do it, I can do it, and now you're just like, I don't even want to try to do it. Like,
yeah.
if you're finding that this is like a now this is the new pandemic is like,
Yeah.
people are collapsed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think, like, a lot of the younger kids, maybe like 8 and younger, tend to be pretty hyper. They're like, they've got an intense stress response towards fight or flight going on in the playroom. But the teens I'm working with are really quite collapsed. And I have one that they'll come in and their black hoodies up, kind of almost to their eyebrows, and they've got a mask on, and then their hair is forward, and I can barely see their eyes, and they sit in one of my chairs and they don't move for the entire time we're together. They'll talk, thankfully they will engage sometimes, but not always. We've sat in silence for like 45 minutes before. So yeah, we're seeing, I've had this sense that I would love it if the world, when we're out of this crisis piece or whatever that looks like and whatever that means, if we could just like hit pause and almost have like a healthy quarantine, because I think our nervous systems need a reset, and it's really hard to do when we've got these ongoing responsibilities and life didn't stop because of a virus. Like people still had babies, people were still dying for other reasons, and people still bought houses. Like all of these things still happened.
But it feels like to me that what I see happening in our society is that it happened. All of this happened the last 2 years, but some of the administration part of the world that we live in, their expectation is like, okay, let's go. And it's like, there's a disconnect between what you're saying. People need a pause, a healthy pause, like, wahoo, everybody go on vacation. Let's take it in segments. So we,
Yeah.
But that's not what necessarily like workforce wants to do, or I don't know what it's like in the school system because we're schooling at home, but yeah, it's a challenge. It's really challenging. Yeah,
it is. Yeah. So what we're gonna have to do is get creative around how we can regulate and stay connected and reconnected to ourselves in whatever ways we can. Yeah, I think the pressure in the district, at least that I see with my son and here through his school, is catching kids up where they've lost learning. We've got to get them caught up when it's like, well, not yet. And let's trust that it's going to come when their brains feel safe again. But yeah, it's going to be a rocky road, I think.
Yeah, no, and I think that, oh, please, Harmony.
And I think that I'm kind of struggling with the fact that there still isn't a vaccine available to children under 5.
Right. Yeah.
And so that just puts parents in this really, with parents who have kids under 5, it just puts folks in a really, really, really tough place.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a kid under 5, and yeah, where it's rough right now. But
right, there's so much more deliberate risk assessment and weighing this, like, what's going to be better, like going to some social thing or staying home and being safe. It's awful. I'm tired. Like, I'm tired of those decisions personally, and it's so hard. And yeah, with such a little one, that's even harder.
Yeah, and I had a family member who, same thing, right? They were living in one super tiny house, 2 kids, one of them was 4 and the other was 7, right? 1-bedroom place. And it was especially during that first year, right? So, and they didn't really have a yard, so the more contained they super isolated. But just the stress from that was, over.
Yeah.
I feel like the first year we got through it with like grit and determination and hope, and then the second year has been like, whatever, I hope nothing terrible happens. Maybe the world will recover, just sort of not exactly hopeless, but
it's that's that collapse piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we rallied and we came together, and now it's like, yeah, this just doesn't seem like it matters what I do, and no choice feels great. And I think, gosh, I'm trying to think where I've seen it now, but I think there is like, what's the word? Science has researched out these responses within a community to these natural disasters. That's right. Amanda, we've seen it at the Column Resilience. Mini shows those. I forget who they come from. I think it's the state, right? And so we're in kind of that pit of despair.
Yeah.
If anybody's seen,
but I will
Yeah.
say I felt just a wave of relief and some release. Like, thank you for it. I feel like this class was a guided meditation.
Oh, thank
So
you. Oh, good.
that,
Yay, I'm so
thank
glad.
you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Yes, excellent. All right, gang. Well, I'm gonna pop off. I was too nervous before class to eat, so I'm hungry now because we're done. But I hope to see everybody next Wednesday. We'll be talking about development and temperament, and we'll do a little bit more about the reality of now. We've already kind of touched on some of that, but yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed
Good to
it.
see everyone. Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Bye.
And please, if you have friends who may want to attend, we'll have this video online so they can maybe watch it before they attend next week's class. So I'll try to get that up on our pwforkids.org website in the next day or so. So just so they have a little background. But I think this is a great conversation, and appreciate everybody for giving up an hour in the evening when we all have stuff we want to do. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Bye.
We'll follow up. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.